So we've been through the process of the Tech Scout, right? Everyone is across what we're trying to get through. We've gone through and looked at what we're trying to go for look, for time of day, for style. All of those boxes have been ticked. Now comes the important step of scheduling out how it's going to get done, right? You probably talked about it on the Tech Scout. There was probably a rough schedule going into it, and you're having conversations all along the day during the Tech Scout. Maybe you're back and forth even before that with the first AD, with the director, if there's very specific things that have to get done with either talent or locations, if you're moving around a lot. For us, day, exterior, commercial, the schedule could not be more important, right? This will dictate the look of the entire commercial. So as a cinematographer, you got to be really switched on in this period of pre-production to make sure that you're in constant communication with the first AD and the director and the producer, making sure that everyone has the right goals aligned with each other and they're all going for the same thing, right? And as the cinematographer, you're there to just double check to make sure that the look is being put at the front and is getting as much attention as necessary. So the normal process will be after the Tech Scout, the first AD will put out a rough schedule, and that'll be sent to mostly the heads of department, just asking for any feedback. And that is the crucial period, right? There's really there's two things that we're looking for. Any major disasters, right? Any major, like you talked about one thing and the first AD just completely forgot. That is a high possibility, right? It happens not every job, but more often than not, it will happen where you mention it, you talk to the first AD, maybe they go away and talk to another department, and the schedules get flipped and flopped. So you just got to make sure that whatever you mentioned on the Tech Scout or whatever you had in conversation with the first AD, that gets actually drawn up in those first boards. So that's something I would be looking for, right? Immediate red flags. The other thing will be not properly allocating enough time to bump in, because every cinematographer is going to work differently, how they like to light, how they like to cover a scene. The way that I like to do it, which is basically lighting from, if you're inside, lighting from outside, using big bounces, using the sun wrap rather than the sun sandwich. Normally what will happen is the first setup takes the longest, right? You got to unload all the trucks, you got to get everything into place. We'll shoot the wide first, and then as we go in, things start to accelerate, right? It's like a snowball effect. As you go in, things get quicker, the changes get quicker, so that should be reflected in the schedule. If that doesn't happen, what ends up biting you is that if every single setup has the exact same allocated amount of time, you will go way over on the first one. You'll fall way behind and everyone will panic for no reason other than you didn't communicate with the first AD what the typical process is going to be for the schedule, how fast you're going to move once you get going. So it'll be a really awkward first 2-3 hours of the day because you're going to be so far behind, which could have been completely avoided if you just spoke with the first AD, spoke with the director and the producer and said, hey, listen, this is how I like to do it. We're going to take a big chunk early on. Let's get a pre-call for everybody, get there early so that when we show up, we can just roll straight into it, right? We've got complete command of the crew. They know what they're doing. They know what to set up. You're obviously going to go there early anyway to make sure that everything is going to plan, but just so that everyone is at ease, you're going to go in and say, listen, we're going to really front load the schedule with lighting and building and rigging. And then once we get into it, things will move much quicker. Not only does that get everyone on the same page as to how the day is going to work and how you like to operate, but also it allows the director to get in much more of a rhythm. If you're not breaking every time you change a setup for 45 minutes, they're able to keep in the flow. Same as the talent on the day. They're able to keep in that same flow and that same headspace the quicker you can move. So I like to do 15 minutes per entry in is generally what I'm looking for. But really, overall, when you first see the schedule, it's really red flags and any directional flops as well. So like I said, I like to front load, especially on something like this, where we're going to have big wides at the start, day exteriors, right? There's not a whole lot of lighting going on here, so we don't have to preload too much for lighting. But it's imperative that we are there at the exact right time because there's no way to get that look back. As soon as we miss our backlit window, it's gone. So I'm going to be looking for that. The next thing is going to be directional flops. So this is, again, where you're going to have to take time and make sure that that has been looked after in the schedule. And what I mean by directional flops is if we're looking one way, shooting out this entire direction, when we turn around, it's going to be significantly more time to change the lighting setup, the rigging setup, the grip setup, whatever it is, it's going to take more time. So I'm looking at those two things, big directional changes. And also for day exterior outside like this, we're going to need to really nail our wide shots. So that's what I'm going to be looking at in this schedule. Then after you go through and you make your little corrections and you pass it on and you get all of that communication out of the way, the first AD will finally then put together the final draft of the schedule, and that'll be put out to the rest of the crew. And that's really when you're locked in. You are locked in because all the other departments will see that schedule, and you'll have to keep that flow. So if you have any hesitation about the schedule, about what time you want to be somewhere, if you've got more homework that you want to do on the sun path, or what the look is actually going to be, now is the time to do it before that final draft of the schedule goes out, because as soon as it does, it's very, very difficult to walk back if you see something. So that is the schedule process. Let's jump into the first draft that the first AD has sent through, and we will walk through this entire process for the job.